So I'm just waiting for the people from SolShare to come to talk to me about this amazing technology and IP, basically, about how to share solar in apartment buildings. I mean, the big challenge for apartment buildings is that they've got one roof and many tenants. And how do you share the benefit of that one roof amongst the many tenants? So SolShare have come up with this system. It's both a hardware and a software solution. It's pretty clever stuff, but they've come up with a way of doing it equitably in multiple occupancy buildings. Anyway, looks like here they are. G'day, I'm Glenn Morris from the Smart Energy Lab, and today I've got Shun from Allume Energy to talk about something really clever. Shun, thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.
Bit of a journey out here.
Yeah, it's a good ride up here, good view also.
Tell me about Allume.
Yeah, so just a bit about Allume. So Allume Energy, we're a product vendor, so we manufacture the SolShare. So pretty much the SolShare, we're the first company in the world that's manufactured the SolShare. And the SolShare, what it does, it splits a single solar output to multiple tenants in a building. So ideally, the idea is you can take one AC output from an inverter and split that to up to 15 single phase apartments, or you can have a combination of 3-phase for 5 apartments. So usually we can have that combination, and all of this happens behind the meter. So it's really a clever solution that we've manufactured and we've produced, and it's really solving a real problem out there.
Right. Well, you jump straight into SolShare, the product. So Allume Energy is the company, SolShare is the product.
Yes.
And the product, where did the initiative come to develop a solar sharing product from?
So this initiative started from our CEO, Cam. So Cameron Knox is the CEO of Allume Energy, and this idea came from him. And interestingly, it started as a university project at the University of Melbourne, and that sort of developed over time to the product that it is right now. And we've had a lot of iterations of the product over the years to that beautiful SolShare box that we have right now that does this.
Okay, so see if I've learned it right. If you're an apartment building,
yes,
and you've got a common roof,
yes,
you can share the solar off that common roof to all the apartments in the building.
Correct. So that's something that wasn't available to people before. So traditional solar, you need to have just one single building, one NMI, one mains connection, and then that just feeds into one apartment. But now apartment buildings where you have more people living there or sharing one roof, right now they can take advantage and install more power, and then just have that single AC coming into the SolShare, and the SolShare manages all of that distribution across all the individual tenancies.
And it can take an output of any inverter or specific types of inverters? So
the SolShare is inverter agnostic, so it doesn't care what inverter you use. So you can use a SolShare, a SolarEdge, Fronius, SMA, whatever you want. So it's got its own special requirements where it can have a maximum of 22 kilowatts AC power into the SolShare, but then it doesn't care what inverter you use. Pretty much as far as you have that single AC, you could also work with micro inverters also, so with N-phase and whatnot. So you have that advantage of not being locked into one particular inverter, but as far as you have that single AC source coming into the SolShare, you can split that across multiple tenancies.
So 22 and a bit kilowatts AC input,
yes,
to 15 tenants?
Yes.
Let's say there's 30 tenants.
So if there's 30 tenants, you can use more than one SolShare.
All right.
Yes, so you can have 2 or 3 SolShares in an apartment, depends on your requirements.
Can it be retrofitted? Say the building already has its own solar system, which might be just servicing the common areas, but they want to be able to share it to common areas and to tenants. Can you do that?
Yes, so definitely you can do that. So the great thing about the SolShare is you can have that in a new build or retrofit projects. So we've done a couple of retrofit projects in the past where there's some requirements, of course, that we need to make sure that the building meets, but definitely you can have retrofits also.
Now, as soon as we say sharing, the next question really is, how do you divvy up that sharing? Is it everyone gets an equal amount, some get more than others? How do you do that?
So the great thing about the SolShare is, so we've got different algorithms that run on the SolShare. So we understand that every scenario is different when you're installing the SolShare. So we've got 3 algorithms that run on the SolShare. So you can commission the SolShare and have each algorithm done during the commissioning. So we have the optimized algorithm. So the optimized algorithm pretty much optimizes the solar from that single shared roof. Now we have the optimized and even. So the optimized and even does something slightly different, where it makes sure that it optimizes the solar, but at the end of a 30-day calendar month, everyone should have gotten the same amount of solar from.
Yes. It's averaged over a month.
Yes, correct.
Because everyone's not home and during the day at the same time. Some people are more in the weekends.
Exactly.
All right. So in terms of your bill, you basically get an equal share, even though on a daily basis it'll vary.
Yeah, it's going to vary on a different basis. So let's say, for instance, you've got 4 people living in a single apartment. So tenant 1 is a lawyer. He goes out every day, comes back at night. Tenant 2 probably is a student, and she's probably got assignments and she's home all day and just doing assignments or studying online. Then we've got also a single mom who's living probably in a tenancy number 3, and tenancy number 4 is probably someone who works night shift. So pretty much the optimizing even sort of gives that solution where whoever is at home can continue to use the solar and take advantage of that dynamic sharing. So they might be at home and they might need more than the apportioned lot that they have, and tenant number 1 who's not at home, we can divert his own solar share to tenant number 2 and 3 and 4 because they're all at home at that point in time, and then you have that advantage of being able to dynamically share that solar. So towards the end of the month, tenant number 1, if he hasn't sort of received his share at a particular point, now the SolShare diverts all of that power back to tenancy number 1, so he gets its allocated number for that month. So at the end of a 30-day calendar month, everyone should have gotten that same amount of average, and so no one is getting more than the other person.
I can feel there's a lot of IT that goes behind this.
Yes, there is.
Initially, when you said SolShare, I thought equal at the same time, but it's equal over a period of time.
Yes.
And you've got a whole bunch of variables that you have to consider, like the missed opportunity of self-use of the solar, because that's obviously the best time to use it.
Correct.
You don't want to spill it to the grid. So I guess it's not just a hardware solution, it's a software solution.
It is a hardware and a software solution, correct.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now, have you got any deployments of the SolShare? Are they being, used right now?
Yeah, so they are being used right now. So just before we get into that, so there's the last algorithm within Touch.
Yep.
And that's the unequal algorithm. So this is a very unique algorithm which we just introduced recently, where we have situations where people pay different amounts of money for the solar and the SolShare. So let's say you've got an apartment with 10 tenants, and then they all agree that they want solar on the apartment, and someone's probably paid maybe 30% more than the rest. So what we can do is we can allocate more percentage of that solar to that single person and give everyone less. So we've seen that happening more where a single tenant or someone who's got more, maybe a 3-bedroom, and they're like, oh yeah, I want more solar. Meanwhile, everyone else has a 1-bedroom. So they can decide to sort of contribute more to getting the solar on the building. And then in that case, during commissioning, we can allocate a higher percentage of solar over the calendar month to them compared to other people.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be an equal division. It can be an unequal division based on the algorithm.
Based on the algorithm, right.
Right, cool. So have you done this?
Yes, we have done this. It is existing. There's installs in Australia, definitely.
Do you know how many?
So we have well over 100 right now.
Wow.
So we've got our first set of installs in the US that just went out, and they're running right now. We've got our first install in the UK and one in Wales.
Wow, so you're a global company.
Yes, we are a global company. Yes.
Right. So it came out of Australia?
Yes, came out of Australia, manufactured in Australia, designed and manufactured in Australia, and exported to the world.
Wow.
Yes.
That's awesome.
It's amazing.
Now, these units, is there much parasitic load? Do they consume some energy?
So usually it's a very little amount of energy, so I need to find out how much exactly.
We'll put that in the description, don't worry.
So it consumes a little, not so much.
Yep.
But generally it consumes a bit of energy. So more like a standby standby power. So usually at night, maybe when it's not running, it does. So we have like CTs to constantly measure consumption. That's what decides the sharing. So pretty much usually at night also those CTs are still measuring the consumption of those individual tenancies, both for monitoring and record purposes.
I imagine it's really just the electronics for managing the smarts. It's not actually doing power conversion per se. It's just doing switching.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, so that's probably extremely efficient.
Yes.
Yeah, right. So in terms of the unit, this is the one that you've just brought to show me. We'll have a look at it in a minute.
Yeah.
Is the 35 amp version.
Correct.
Are there plans to go bigger, or do you just have multiples?
So for now, right now, we have the 35 amp version.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we're still at early stages and we're deploying this SolShares and all. So the plan is ideally to continue to monitor what's happening in the market and see how best we can improve the product. But at the moment, right now, we have the 35 amps.
Right. Now, if I was a building manager and I want to install or get one of these units installed, what are some of the considerations I'd have to look at?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things to think about. So ideally, we see the SolShare as a perfect solution for low to medium rise apartments. So what I mean is usually apartments between 5 and 60 tenants, and usually between 1 to 5, 6 floors. So that's where we see it as the most efficient. So anything more than that, it gets we have like lesser roof space, more people. It might not be very efficient with the number of tenants. So when you have low to medium rise apartments where you have 5 to 60 people, it's a very sweet spot and a perfect solution for that. So I think that'll be the first one to look at. It's what kind of building are you trying to put it on? How many tenants do you have? And sort of what's the roof space you have? Now, another thing you would also want to consider is how many kilowatts you're trying to put in. So if you're trying to put in, let's say for instance, 50 kilowatts, watts of DC and probably about 40 AC, you've got that option to sort of optimize that with like 2 SolShares and have one inverter. Depends on how you want to do it. Well, 120 kilowatts going to one SolShare, another 20 kilowatts going to another SolShare, and you can split that across 15 per SolShare or 13 total. So the first thing you'll be looking at is, I'd say, how many tenants are you trying to split the solar for? How much solar AC do you have? And then also probably, I guess, how much roof space you have. And then lastly, what's your algorithm? How are you trying to sort of switch this across the tenants?
Right. So do people generally come to you saying, I want solar from my apartment building, or does an installer try to solve a problem and then come to you?
So we have different channels of which in which that happens. So of course, some installers will come directly saying, oh, we've heard you have the solution. We want to solve this problem. How do we go about this? And we have a technical team who is well versed and skilled in answering all those questions. We've got a very amazing business development team also that manages that. We've also got body corporates and building managers and building operators who come directly to ask for the solution and to buy from us. And then also property developers also who are, have new builds and they're trying to fit the buildings with solar, and they're looking at very innovative solution to solve that problem.
Right, cool. I've just come back from Europe actually, and everyone's talking about electricity prices there, just going through the roof.
Yes.
I mentioned that's going to be a market because there's a lot of multiple occupancy. I mean,
yes.
European cities are basically 5 stories high, that's it. And there's one roof and there's a lot of people underneath it.
Yes. And to be honest, I think that's a very, very interesting market. And I think it's a really amazing time for us to be in Europe because it's, as you said, the electricity market, it's very like, I've got like cousins and family in the UK and they're telling me exactly the same thing, that, oh, it's very expensive to live. Gas is expensive, electricity is expensive. So I think this is a perfect solution. This would definitely be able to alleviate that pain of higher electricity prices. And the way it's looking, it's just going to get higher, the prices. So yeah, this is a perfect solution.
When it comes to monitoring, do you have your own monitoring platform?
Yes, so we do have our own monitoring platform made in-house, where you can monitor sort of like all of the sharing and sort of the solar you're receiving, and then also there's a bit of grid monitoring also.
Right. Can it be used for billing? Like if you're doing in an embedded network, you want to sort of bill people, is it meter grade measurements?
So at the moment right now, it's not a meter grade measurement. So we use it more for monitoring and just more for information of sort of like how the solar is sharing and what you're receiving.
Right. I guess because of the share factor, they're all getting a benefit. And,
Yes.
And that's the outcome they want.
Correct.
Wow. Look, I'm really excited by this product, and I'm looking forward to looking at the actual unit out here.
Yeah, sure. So it's just out there. You know, we can go have a look, see what's out there, and see what it physically looks like.
Okay. Good one. Thanks, Sean.
Awesome.
Okay. Well, here we are in front of the SolShare. Sean, this is the 35 amp user.
Yes, this is a SolShare 35. Yes.
How heavy is this?
So it's about 40 kg.
All right.
Yes.
I noticed you guys got it out of the car without too much trouble.
Yeah, it was pretty good. Like once you have two people, it's always pretty easy to pick.
So the installation for one of these would involve what?
So pretty much, so every installation is unique, considering how it works. So pretty much for the SolShare, the connection is behind the meter. So ideally, depends on the cable run and how big the apartment is usually. So you'd need to connect each of the tenancies directly behind the meter, and then you've got some CT runs also. So usually this could be based on sort of like if it's a retrofit or a new build. Usually new builds are pretty much more straightforward because you can sort of like plan this in. With retrofit, there's a bit more thinking required. So, but you've got your cabling which goes to each tenancy apartment. So I can just open this up right now so you can have a look at where the connections are. So we've got an input which comes in from the solar inverter, which we talked about, and then we've got 15 outputs. So we've got 5 on the red phase, 5 on the white phase, and 5 on the blue phase. And then also we've got our CT tails that plug in just at the CT plugs just at the bottom right here. And then also we also usually have a tenancy isolator. So usually that's just to isolate just for maintenance purposes. So maintenance isolator. So
per tenant or for?
So per tenant. So usually just have another maintenance isolator box with 15 individual tenancies, or depends if you have 5 3-phase connections, whichever one. But that's just for maintenance. If some work is happening at the apartment or someone moves out and all of that, so you have that option to be able to sort of isolate those tenancies here.
Let me break that down a little bit, because I'm always interested in the physical installation side of things.
Correct.
So the CTs are going to measure at what point?
So pretty much it measures at the service side. So pretty much what you're measuring on the service side of the meter pretty much is the consumption that happens from the grid. So pretty much where the CT is clamped it's able to determine when the SolShare would send solar down that connection. So it's just basically monitoring what's happening on that connection, just taking readings and using that to make intelligent decisions.
So if we've got all our meter panels here,
correct,
we could put the CTs around the customer side of the meter, or are you doing it at the customer switchboard?
So basically you can do it on the meter side.
Right, so the easiest installation would be where you've got a main switchboard and a meter panel in the same location.
Correct.
This sits somewhere in the middle.
Correct, yeah. So ideally, in most cases, to reduce our cable run, that's usually a sweet spot. Just to put the SolShare just somewhere around the meter panel and our distribution board thereabouts.
Yeah. Now you mentioned maximum of 5 stories. Why is that?
So usually what we've seen that just really more as a sweet spot. So usually once you have higher stories, it might be a situation where you have smaller roof space and probably more tenants in there.
Oh, it's not an electrical limitation.
No, it's not an electrical limitation.
The amps don't run out as they go 5 stories.
They don't usually. So it's just really usually more, as I said, like the sweet spot is usually low to medium rise. 5 to 60 tenants. So above that 60, you start to realize that you're getting smaller roof space, and it becomes a bit harder to really share that, I'd say, properly around those number of people.
Yeah, I mean, of course, when you've got those pencil high-rise buildings, they've got a little roof and there's 1,000 people.
Exactly, yeah.
It's just not worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about building integrated PV? Say it's not on the roof, if you put it on the walls and stuff, if it's an architectural solution.
Yeah.
Is that a possibility?
So that's something we've started looking into. So we've also definitely seen a lot of companies coming out with the BIPVs recently. So it's something we're definitely looking into. So right now we haven't done an installation with that, but definitely something that will be possible. As I said, it's usually what we receive is a single AC source. So with BIPVs, definitely we will be able to make that happen. At the moment, we haven't done any, but we're definitely looking out into the market and watching how that technology evolves.
I thought you probably considered this already, because when I look at the high-rise buildings, I think there's a lot of glass facing the sun, and PV glass, you can actually get PV glass, which it's got the same rating as high-rise glass in terms of, the size of objects that fall out of it, and if it breaks, etc. So it already meets all the requirements, and it's in the sun, but the problem has been who gets the benefit. And so you solve that problem, which is you can just decide who gets the benefit, whether it's the tenants or the infrastructure of the building, etc.
Yeah, so as I said, definitely it's an amazing technology, and we're watching it closely. At the moment right now, we've got our team, and we'll definitely continue to monitor this and definitely explore it very soon in the future. But yeah, as I said, definitely something we're watching very closely.
Well, let's have a look at the guts of the unit. We'll tip it on its back, take it off the stand, and we'll have a good close look.
Okay, sure. Okay. This is the SolShare 35. So the way it is right now, so just to access the connection points, what we do is we just slide it higher. And once you slide it up, just slides up and sits pretty well halfway here, or less than halfway. So here we've just got all our internal connections. As there's our point of connection. So at the far left here, we've got the SolShare input. So this is where we have a single AC source coming in from our solar inverter. And as I mentioned earlier, it's solar inverter agnostic, so you don't have to worry about if you're installing with, a furnace or a solar edge or whatever. You just have a single source here. We can take up to 22 kilowatts watts of AC. Now, every other thing from that point on are all just the outputs. So we have 15 outputs here, which are grouped into 5 three-phase connections, and then the SolShare is able to split this single three-phase input, or it could also be 3 single-phase connections, and you can split that across 15 connections here. So you can have a combination of 3-phase and single-phase connections, just all single-phase connections pretty much. Now at the far right here, we have our CT tails. So our CT tails just plug in nicely in here. So the CTs are measuring all the energy usage from all the apartments. So this CT connections here, so we clamp the CT on the service side of the meter pretty much, and then you're able to measure all of that consumption and all of that solar power being used up by each individual tenancies. And pretty much that's what this installation area of the SolShare looks like.
So Sean, what's the IP rating of this device?
So it's IP rated 56. So you can install it out outdoors and indoors. So ideally you need to have a cover over it. But yeah, you can install it both outdoors and indoors.
Given that most apartment buildings probably have indoors switchboards, etc., it's mostly going indoors, I imagine?
Yeah, so most of the time we'll go indoors, but we've seen scenarios also where it's installed outdoors. We've seen scenarios where there's a special shed where they've sort of put out for both the inverter and all the other utilities and batteries we have. But yeah, it can usually sit in any of those places, but most times you see it installed outdoors or indoors.
Now, I notice it has quite a substantial heatsink on the back, so I assume you've got some ventilation requirements?
Yes, so we do have ventilation requirements. So we have clearances that are required on both sides of the install. So 15 cm on the left, 15 cm on the right, and we have about 30 cm requirements above and 30 cm beneath.
Right, so convection cooled?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, no fans?
So no fans in this unit.
Right. What's the warranty on the product?
So it comes with a 10-year warranty. Yes.
Great. And if it needs to be serviced, where would it be serviced?
So usually, we have our service partners across Australia who carry out service on the unit. So usually we've got our Allume technical support line who would, and the units all have remote monitoring, so we're able to see once the unit is online what's happening. And so if there's an issue, we're able to pick that up. And then depending on what needs to be done, we've got service partners all across the country. So we can just arrange a service partner to come and service as required.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Sean.
Thank you very much. Thank you.